So David, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the yard. Just plug your ears and you won't be bored. House of David started out here in Benton Harbor in 1903. Benjamin and Mary Purnell, who were itinerant preachers, received a revelation. They said they received a revelation that they were the seventh and final.
Again, I'll put a little intro to the house. First of all, if you go back 84 years to 1930, if you came here on the first day of June, the building you would be seeing here is just a foundation and some blocks going up. The back of the building would have been the press would already be here, protected, and you'll see that next on the tour when you get out of up here. Mary's building here was for housing people, and they were leaving an old colony, which they left comfortable homes and successful businesses. And they were building this so that by winter time they had a roof over their head. So this was, they were really making some waves with building all of this. They were also building the Shiloh building. They were also building the two buildings across, and they were also starting to work on the hotel downtown, which was unfinished. So they had labor going everywhere, and they had farms to run to feed themselves. The bakery, which is the gift shop, that was already finished, so they could have bread to eat. Things were very austere, and so people were building in town. They were living in tents, and farms were loaded. I mean, everybody was like 2 and 3 and 4 to a small little room. And this was all being built here very rapidly, mostly with second-hand lumber. Material they would go to demolition sites. They went to Chicago and bought windows and doors. The lumber on the floor was all milled here. They set up a little mill to actually cut trees off the farmland to create new farmland. This came from downtown Benton Harbor. It's a balustrade that was taken out of a 2-story building. They took the building down, they brought all the material here, and they reconstructed this. The nosing on the stairway is all hollowed underneath. As you look when you come through here, it's all hollowed on the underside, because what they did was when you reconstructed it, they didn't want the hollow from the tread, so they just flipped the tread over, so now you have a flat. And so that's the way, as I said, secondhand, when you go to the corner, you can look on the inside of this underneath, and you can see the treads nailed on there from the old. In John Tucker's room, the baseball star in the corner, that end of the building is 1930. That's what it would have looked like. There's no such thing as blinds. There's no such thing as paint. There's no such thing as linoleum. No extras. That didn't start until 1935. And they finally got some money to do things. In that room and some of these other rooms here on this end, you'll see on the windowsills and the window pane dark lumber, and that's because when they bought the windows in Chicago, they got a great deal on them, but when they got them all home and they were all packed, they realized they were all covered with coal dust. They'd been sitting in an old warehouse, so they had a job of cleaning all those windows. And they never got the coal dust out because lamp black goes into everything with its oil. So we were stripping all this down, the paintwork, the floors, the doors, all of that to get it back to 1930. We found some of those windows. They were trying to clean them. I said, you're not going to clean them, just leave them, because I've always wondered where they went. What happened was they actually painted most of the woodwork in here, and which is unusual because our people usually don't paint woodwork. But the reason that is because many of our people that were in this building came from the High Island community up in northern Lake Michigan. And so they were builders, and they were going to live in this house, and so all they had ever seen was wood, so they wanted to paint. We'd seen enough wood, now we want to paint. So everything in this house was painted, and it follows chronologically. This end is 1930 as they would have moved in. It moves around to the middle 30s, late 30s, 40s, and 50s, and this is your last room, 1960 to 75. It's got a television in it. That was a room that was the lady that lived in there, Ethel Walker. She's up on the top there. I put down the linoleum and painted that room for her in 1974 and 1975. So that was a room that was out. The last person that lived in here was a Tucker, Melvin Tucker, John Tucker's youngest brother. and he lived upstairs. He was here until 1993. So he spent 60 years of his life in this building. Doc Talley lives over here in this room. Just as you go around the bend there, that first room on the left there. Doc was your other great baseball star that lived in the house with his wife Edith. As you go in there, you'll think, wow, this is a very feminine room. And it is, because Doc was on the road playing baseball all summer and basketball all winter. So it was actually Edith's room. He came home, of course, on breaks and different. I tell you, when they all came home was harvest, because harvest time in the colony was huge. An example, 1943, the peach harvest was over 40,000 bushels. And they harvested it all themselves. They boxed it, they crated it, they packed it and sent it off. They even did some of the trucking with it. So no matter who you were, where you were, baseball, printer, paper hanger, painter, roofer, everybody was at harvest, no matter what it was. And that was your big fruit crops in the fall, was when everybody was home. So the sporting thing even bowed to that. So your sporting teams were not out on the road in September, October usually. You'll see in these rooms, if you take a peek in the closets, if there's one in here, there might be one that's actually painted, but most of them are still the old rough plaster. They never finished them. They never painted them to the very day. They never had time. Even when they moved in and had, years later, they just never finished the closets. In the corner room, the very corner room, May Anderson and her mother Rose, they were from Australia, from Brisbane area. The linoleum on the floor is almost worn out. In fact, the bed area is worn right through the posts for the wheel. We went down 3 layers to get to that, and because we were looking to authenticate if 1935 was in fact the first year they did linoleums and all the fancy stuff. And in fact, that's where we found all the 35 papers, 1935 papers. Oh. So that's what we were looking for. So most of these rooms, you'll see there's several layers of linoleum, but one of them we decided to go all the way down the different layers to see what was actually. So they put down newspaper for insulation, and of course it's the current paper, because after you lay down, you don't pull them up again. So we found the 1935 papers in there. So that, in fact, we did any linoleum and paint. And so as you see wallpaper in these other rooms, you'll see that's later, the dates on there. High Island, people from Australia, new people that have come to the colony, because it grows in the first year from 217 to over 250. So there's people coming from different parts. In fact, some of the Texans that came up were put into Bethany here. And there's another floor and an attic all the way up. And the attic is the cooker, though. That's warm. The lower you go on this building, the better it is, because it insulates as it goes down. The kitchen area downstairs is nice and cool. You'll find the print shop is nice and cool. But as you come up the floors, she starts to warm. And again, as you look at the austerity of this, think in terms of people that came from High Island, like the Tuckers, the Tallies were up there, the Ryans were up there. Take into consideration that on High Island, you went out and pumped your own water, you cut your own wood for fire. There was no such thing as hot baths unless you had a cooker underneath it in an outroom. So when they moved into here, they had steam heat, they had bathtubs, hot water, and a cooking facility in the house. So this was heaven. Yeah, this was really heaven, even though it was very austere. You'll see all kinds of rustic pieces of furnishings that they bring. Literally take old junk lumber and beat it together for whatever they needed. This little locker here, you'll see crate lumber. They used a lot of crate lumber where they had, because in the print shop, all that big printing equipment, which you'll see next, all came in big crates. So they took them all apart, didn't throw anything away, used it all. And so a lot of this furnishing in this building has to do with crate lumber for backings and supports. And any questions?
The other tour guy said that it kind of falls on what you said. People left their paying jobs and whatever they had going on in their life and came here. What were their reasons? Was it religion? affiliated, because you mentioned like the 144,000
Yes,
of the
yes.
Bible.
Yes, in lieu of the division in the house of David that created the new community, the people that followed Mary left behind a community that was thriving, successful businesses, comfortable homes, which is just down the street, what they call the big mansions. They're rooming houses, they're not mansions, but however, what they were leaving behind was to come to this, an open field and a lot of work out in front of them. And the people that were coming into this from the world around that Mary was having, because of her spiritual draw, was bringing people like my grandparents from Australia. They came because of the spiritual drawing. And regardless of what they were leaving behind, it was what they were coming to.
So did they split because of the spiritual?
That was part of it, yeah. Mary was the spiritual head. She was also, because of the death of her husband, the sole trustee. And Judge Dewhurst, who was the legal advisor to the colony and also the head of the board of directors, he assumed leadership because he was leading the traffic. And as Benjamin Purnell's health digresses in the 20s, the judge takes on those responsibilities. Mary's in the background, and although she's the sole trustee. So when Benjamin Purnell dies in 1927, all the membership is deciding who we're going to follow for direction, future, the whole thing. And some of these people have spent a quarter of a century here already, so they've got a lot invested. So it's not a very pretty thing. And what they leave, and what they leave behind to build this is with determination. I mean, they're really moving along to do things.
So I was told the baseball players live in the house of David?
No, as I said, Doc Talley lived here, and Tucker here. Anderson occasionally would live in the building. A lot of people floated too, depending on.
Oh, okay, when I got the tickets, that's what the lady said, that because I was asking about the big house.
Oh, no.
I was familiar with all this when I was a child.
Yes.
And
Mary got the best of the team, the greatest of the stars.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why I was a little confused. I
Yeah.
thought, well, it seems
Yeah.
like the baseball players were over
Yeah.
here,
Yes,
so did they
yes, they
later
were.
move over there?
No.
Okay,
No, they
so you
both-
kind of
both-
had to make a choice, which person
There were
you
two
gonna
House of David
follow, or
baseball
were you
teams.
gonna
Yeah.
follow, and she was more spiritual,
Yeah.
and do they have, like, what the spiritual, it's Christianity, is it,
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
and then across the road is what?
They're still Christian people. I mean, it's just that,
Okay.
as you have Catholicism and Protestantism, you have, amongst most churches, you have so much of a history, and then there's people who fall out with it over
Even the
interpretations.
same church is
Oh,
split.
yeah, absolutely,
So, okay.
absolutely. So,
Thanks.
Okay, as I said, chronologically, you're going 30s, mid-30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s. There's lots of details to look at.
They bought paper, 10 years supplies of papers, so that they could print everything in the time that they needed. This is the linotype that Chick sat down, and it's like a typewriter, but it really isn't. You print it in, and it would come out like this over here, which you're more than welcome to walk around here if you'd like to look at it. It's really an interesting piece. They melted all of the metal to make your different typesets. Each one of these are backwards. You have to have a kind of mirror to do it, but you would set it up, it would come out of there, and this is actually what it would look like when it came out over here. And from here, it went over to the printing machine, okay? Which is this machine over here. It was a two-man operation. One person would be up here feeding the paper in. Here, as you see here, this is where those came. They put them over here. This is actually what printed. The paper would go in here, and on this roller is the last paper that they actually printed. They printed here for 65 years. This machine is an 1861 machine. It is the only piece of equipment that Mary actually had to have credit to buy. When they came over across the street, they had $60,000. That's it. So to Mary, it was very important for her to get her information out to her colony members across the world. So this was important. In 1930, they came over, they started building. This is the second building that had to be built. The building actually was built around the machine. The paper would come out there, come here. It takes 2 days. The first sheet would be here. It keeps spitting them out. They dry. The next day, they would take the other side, put it through there, through here. 2 days later, it was done. They could start over again. Okay. This here machine is a folding machine. It folded everything from small sizes to big sizes. You just adjusted according to whatever it was. Everything, which is kind of, where's my little sheet here? Oops, excuse me.
Certainly.
You could fold this here, you put that in there, and it would fold it up into the little sections that needed to be done. Thank you. Or if you needed the small ones, it did the small ones. Like I said, they printed everything, from the menus to the cookbooks, their little papers, their cash sheets. Everything was done here. There was no commercial printing. It was 7 days a week that they did. They printed everything. They had little hand ones that they did the smaller ones on. Mary, when she came over, she had in 1926, she was working on the mother's book. Well, when they told her, when the court said that they were done there, get your stuff, move out, you can't print anymore. She had started writing her 4th mother's book. This is all hand typed. This is how they all come out. From here, she waited until 1930 to be able to finish printing and get it out to her members. And this basically is what she had to wait for. So it took her a few years to get her book. And this actually is the original one that was done. And this one here was the first one that came off her press. That was sent to the members. And they actually waited, I mean, they were looking very forward to her mother's book with all of her writings in it. But that was, she started at 26, her first publication came out in 31. Yeah, those are free. Yep, you just, there's little booklets over there also. Let's see.
The building still does get used, but there's no greenhouse anymore. All the buildings out back are gone. You can still see, if you were to walk around back, you can see the foundation of a couple of them. One of the cold frame buildings is still out there. But it was a great success up until 1976 when they decided to close. Kind of the important thing to see in this building is everything had a second purpose, or a second use, or a second life. All of the carriers, you know, different size carriers for whether it was strawberries or blueberries or whatever it was. Nothing matches. You know, every one of them is going to be a little bit different. They were all handmade. They would go to Chet Nichols was one of the places, and they got crates. All of the glass that came from Chet Nichols came in a wooden crate, and Louis would send somebody down. They would bring them back because they're throwing them away. They don't want them. They're done. The glass is gone. There's no return on them, so they would bring them back here, take them apart, save the nails, straighten all the nails out, and build different things like the little boxes you see, the different flats for whatever it may need. Another thing that they repurposed were cans. Motor oil cans, paint cans, fruit cans. They figured out different sizes, and they would pick blueberries. They had on one of the farms was a blueberry farm. I think there is a peach can over there. That was a 4-pound can. They drilled holes in it, cleaned up so there's no sharp edges, put a bail on it or a handle, and they had blueberry cans. We can go down the line a little bit here. Evidently, somebody needed a step stool. Whatever they were doing somewhere along the line, they needed a step stool. If you were to go and buy all these parts and put this together, it probably would have cost $25. You know, you've got a lot of plumbing fittings in here, but somebody didn't need it in one of the other buildings or somewhere else, so we put it together, he made a step stool, didn't cost anything. Yeah, it is. The city of David was going green long before anybody ever thought of going green. Behind you, there is the thing with 104 little things poking out of it. That's called a dibble. Took a long time to probably make it, but he needed it. It's what they use for a flat. They would take the dirt, fill it with the flat, and then poke it, push it down, and then put a seat in each one. You had 104 starts.
Inventive.
Yeah, creative. You know, it probably took a long time to make it, but it was done, you know. You'll see all the different sifters. They're all different size sifters for the different soils. Depending on what he was planting or what he was growing, they needed different soils. And Louis would create his own soil. He used a cement mixer, and they had sand from Silver Beach, they had compost from their compost pile, peat moss, you know, depending on what they were planting. If it was fruit or vegetable or flour, you know, whatever they needed, they would create their own soil and had it ready to go. Some of the other dibbles that are, you know, here, you know, these were maybe hand bought, who knows. But instead of doing that 104 times, you know, he made that.
This is a cool table even, it's got some kind of,
Tin. It's got tin on it. So when they were,
the back comes up.
yep, it was where he did a lot of seeding and stuff, you know.
Oh, you can sweep that dirt back in.
Just sweep it right off,
Yeah.
yep, clean it up. Orange juice can. Cut it off, wrap the tin around so there's no sharp edges. Now it's used for nails. Got a handle on it, ready to go. Everything got used. Nothing got thrown away. You'll see in the different crates all the nails. Never threw a nail away.
So they would roll this wheel along and measure
Yep.
10 feet,
It-
one time around. Wow. They were so creative.
In 1970, up until, what's that? I'm sorry. Okay. Up until 1974, he was supplying Whirlpool, the Whirlpool Administration Building out on 63 with all of their geraniums. They would come every year and buy geraniums and they decorated and put them in the offices. Up until 1974, this is where they came from. If you look at a lot of the pictures, every year there was a float in the Grand Floral Parade. They won almost every year. This is where the flowers came from. There's a business that Louis helped get started. There was two brothers that came, didn't speak very good English. Does anybody know what it is? It's a florist. It's still in business.
It's out on the highway up in Stevensville.
Oh, I haven't heard it yet. Crystal Springs.
Crystal Springs, is
Yeah.
there's an H&J out there in Stevensville also?
No?
They weren't started from here. The Zeiger brothers came from Germany, didn't speak much English, kind of unfamiliar with the area, and they bartered. They didn't have money to start their own business, so they traded. He had this kind of plant, they had that kind of plant, or seeds or whatever they needed, and they traded. They got the business going, still going today, must have worked. I think everybody's kind of looking.
Yeah.
Questions yet?
Old school, huh?